The icy wind screamed through the pines as dusk swallowed the last streaks of light, and in the heart of the forest, where snow lay untouched except for frantic footprints, a young woman staggered beneath the weight of a newborn pressed tightly against her chest, shielding the tiny body with her own until her arms burned and her breath came out in trembling clouds. Her name was Alara Whitlow, a frontier nurse whose wagon train had been ambushed hours before by a band of gunmen searching for valuables and vengeance. And when the bullets started flying, and the horses panicked, and the flames devoured the canvas wagons, she had only one thought to save the child whose mother had died moments after giving birth. Whispering with fading breath, "Please, protect my baby," before going still, leaving Alara with a promise weighing heavier than any weapon. So she ran, stumbling into the woods as gunmen fired after her, branches tearing her dress, snow soaking her boots until her toes went numb. But she never loosened her grip on the tiny bundle, using her own body as a shield whenever gunfire cracked through the trees. And though her lungs burned for breath, she kept moving until her legs buckled beneath her, and she crawled, dragging herself through the snow with one hand while holding the baby with the other, whispering to keep the infant calm, even as darkness blurred her sight. She didn't know how long she crawled before the world grew distant and cold seeped into her bones, whispering sleep, sleep. And she might have obeyed if not for the sudden snap of a twig behind her and the sound of hooves crunching through the snow. Slow, cautious, controlled. She tried to raise her head, expecting another gunman finishing the job, but instead she saw a tall silhouette dismounting from a stallion, snowflakes catching on a broad hat brim and settling against a fur-lined coat, and then a warm voice cut through the cold haze. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" She blinked upward, barely conscious, and through the blur she saw his face, sharp jaw, rugged beard, eyes, the color of winter sky, but burning with concern. This was Colt Arden, a solitary cowboy known in those parts for avoiding trouble, yet always seeming to ride straight into it when someone else needed saving. And without hesitation, he knelt in the snow, lifting her carefully, but with the strength of a man accustomed to saving things heavier than hope. And when he realized she was shielding a newborn beneath her torn coat, his breath caught. Understanding instantly the courage it had taken for her to make it this far alive, he touched her freezing cheek and murmured, "You held on for the little one, didn't you? Damn brave." Then removed his fur coat and wrapped it around both of them, before examining the tree line where faint smoke still rose in the distance. He knew gunmen would be tracking prints soon, so he lifted Alara into his arms, securing the baby against his chest inside his coat, and carried them to his horse with gentle urgency, whispering calming words to the baby as he mounted. With Alara fading in and out of consciousness, he spurred his stallion forward, racing through the forest toward his remote cabin hidden deep in the high woods, a place he seldom shared with anyone. Yet tonight, it was the only safe haven. By the time he reached the cabin, the moon had risen, lighting the snow-covered clearing as he carried the half-frozen woman inside and laid her by the fire, working quickly to warm her limbs with blankets and heated stones, while feeding the infant warm milk from a tin cup he kept for emergencies. Hours passed, slow and silent, except for the crackling fire, until Alara stirred, whispering hoarsely, Is the baby safe?" The first words she spoke since collapsing in the woods. Colt knelt beside her, brushing snow-melted strands of hair from her forehead as he answered, "Safe as can be, thanks to you," and she began to cry, soft and shaking, not from weakness but from finally knowing she had not failed the promise she made to a dying mother. When she gathered herself enough to speak, she told Colt everything: the ambush, the mother's plea, the gunfire, the desperate run through the woods, and he listened with a quiet fury building beneath his calm exterior because he recognized the men she described. They were outlaws who had terrorized the region for months. And now they had chased a woman and a newborn through a snowstorm in their hunger for loot and cruelty. Colt rose slowly, jaw tightening, adjusting the holster on his hip, and Alara watched with fear in her voice as she said, "You can't go out there, not alone." But he looked back at her with a reassuring half-smile and replied, "I'm not going out for me. I'm going out for both of you." Before stepping outside, where snow continued to fall thick and silent. But fate had already brought danger to his doorstep, for at the edge of the clearing, torchlight flickered between the trees, and the silhouettes of gunmen appeared like ghosts, rising from the storm. Colt didn't hesitate. He stepped in front of the cabin, shielding the doorway with his own body, gun drawn, voice steady as he called out, "This ain't your land, and that woman and child ain't yours to hunt." And when the gunmen charged, the clearing erupted in flashes of fire and flying snow as bullets struck pine trunks and torches hissed in the wind. Colt fought with precision born of survival, moving between cover with swift, calculated steps, determined not to let a single outlaw reach the cabin. The battle felt endless, but eventually the gunfire died, torches fell, and silence reclaimed the clearing, broken only by Colt's ragged breaths and the crackle of burning torch stubs melting into the snow. He returned to the cabin, bruised but alive, pushing open the door to find Alara sitting up weakly, baby in her arms, eyes wide with worry until she saw him, then, her breath released in a trembling exhale of relief. Colt knelt before her, and she reached out, touching the cut on his cheek with trembling fingers, whispering, "You saved us." But he shook his head gently and answered, "No, you saved that baby long before I found you. I just finished the job, and for the first time since the nightmare began." She smiled, tired, grateful, and safe at last. Outside, dawn crept through the trees, lighting the world in soft gold as the wind calmed and the forest breathed in quiet peace again. And inside that small cabin, warmed by fire and guarded by a cowboy who had faced death for strangers, a new beginning was carved from the cold, a promise that neither Ira nor the child would ever face the world alone again. Asterisk.